Cotard's delusion is one of the most extreme disturbances of self-existence ever recorded in clinical psychiatry. It is a condition in which a person becomes absolutely convinced that they are dead, do not exist, or have lost their internal organs, blood, or vital essence. They may walk. They may speak. They may respond normally. But internally, they believe life has already ended. This presentation explains how the delusion forms, how the brain generates the belief of non-existence, and why it often leads to profound withdrawal, refusal of care, and life-threatening behavior. All material presented here is drawn from psychiatric case reports, neurological research, and clinical documentation. Section 1. The core mechanism. Human existence is continuously reinforced by internal emotional signals. These signals do not announce themselves, they operate silently. They generate a constant sense of presence, vitality, and being alive. Two systems are primarily involved. The first is the cognitive awareness system. It allows a person to think, reason, speak, and interact with the environment. The second is the affective self-perception system. It produces the internal feeling of being alive. It creates bodily ownership, emotional presence, and continuity of self. In Cotard's delusion, cognitive awareness often remains intact. The person can speak coherently. They can reason logically. They can understand language and context. The failure occurs in the affective self-perception system. The emotional signal of existence disappears. When the brain receives no internal confirmation of being alive, it attempts to explain the absence. And the explanation it produces is this: I am dead, I do not exist, there is nothing inside me. This belief is not metaphorical. It is literal. Section 2. Onset and first symptoms. Cotard's delusion most commonly develops in the context of severe psychiatric or neurological disruption. It is frequently associated with major depressive disorder with psychotic features like schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, neurodegenerative disease, stroke, brain injury, etc. Early symptoms often appear as profound emotional numbness. The patient may say, I feel empty, I feel nothing at all, I don't feel like I'm here anymore. At this stage, the patient is distressed but not yet delusional. They are attempting to describe the absence of internal sensation. As the emotional void deepens, the belief forms, and once it forms, it becomes fixed. They begin stating, I'm dead, my organs have stopped working. My blood is gone, there is nothing inside my body. There is no hesitation, no uncertainty. The belief is absolute. Section 3. The experience of non-existence. A defining feature of Cotard's delusion is the loss of internal presence. The patient does not merely feel depressed, they feel absent. There is no emotional feedback from the body. No warmth, no vitality, no sense of being located inside oneself. This absence is interpreted logically. The brain concludes, if I feel nothing, then I must not exist. Unlike depersonalization, which involves feeling unreal, Cotard's delusion involves believing one is unreal. The distinction is critical. Section 4. Behavioral changes. As the belief of non-existence solidifies, behavior changes drastically. Common behaviors include refusing food, refusing water and medication. They will also neglect hygiene and may remain motionless for long periods. One chilling behavioral change is how they start to express indifference to injury. Things get very scary and out of hand when they start requesting burial or placement in a morgue believing that decay has already begun. The patient may state, "Dead people don't eat. There's no point in treatment. My body is already gone." These behaviors are not acts of despair. They are logical responses to the belief of death. Section 5. The immortality paradox. Some patients with Cotard's delusion develop a belief that they cannot die, not because they feel invincible, not because they believe they are protected by any force, but because, in their internal logic, death has already happened. They believe the event of dying is complete. The body remains. Consciousness remains. But life, as a concept, is over. This creates a paradoxical belief structure. The patient believes they are both dead and still existing at the same time. Because death has already occurred, it cannot happen again. This belief removes the normal psychological boundaries that protect human behavior. Fear of injury disappears. Fear of illness disappears. Fear of consequence disappears. Pain is no longer interpreted as a warning signal. It is dismissed as irrelevant. If the body is already dead, pain has no meaning. Some patients describe sensations of injury without emotional response. Others report that wounds, hunger, or exhaustion feel unreal or pointless. This belief dramatically increases risk. Patients may stop eating, believing nourishment is unnecessary for a corpse. They may refuse medical care, believing treatment is meaningless. They may walk into traffic, extreme environments, or dangerous situations without hesitation, not because they want to die, but because dying is no longer perceived as possible. In severe cases, self-harm is not driven by emotional distress. It is driven by logical consistency within the delusion. If I am dead, the reasoning goes, nothing I do can harm me. This makes Cotard's delusion one of the most dangerous psychiatric conditions documented. The threat is not despair alone. The threat is the complete removal of survival instinct. When death is perceived as finished, the brain stops protecting the body, and without that protection, ordinary reality becomes lethal. Section 6. Neurological evidence. Clinical investigations reveal that Cotard's delusion is not a philosophical belief system. It is a neurological failure of self-recognition. Neuroimaging and case studies consistently associate the condition with multiple regions of dysfunction. One of the primary areas involved is the frontal lobes. This region governs self-awareness, reality testing, and the ability to evaluate beliefs against evidence. When frontal regulation weakens, implausible conclusions are no longer corrected. Patients lose the internal mechanism that normally says, "This thought does not align with reality." Abnormal activity is also observed in the parietal cortex. This region integrates sensory information and constructs the perception of bodily presence. It helps answer a fundamental question the brain asks continuously. Is this body mine? When parietal processing becomes unstable, bodily ownership fractures. Their body no longer registers as a living, inhabited entity. The limbic system is also critically affected. This system generates emotional meaning and internal confirmation of existence. It produces the feeling of being alive rather than the idea of it. In Cotard's delusion, limbic signaling is muted or distorted. Emotional feedback from the body drops to near silence. Studies show that when patients are exposed to stimuli that normally confirm bodily presence, pain, touch, temperature, hunger or physiological stress. Their autonomic nervous system response is significantly reduced. Heart rate changes are minimal. Skin conductance remains flat. This creates a catastrophic mismatch. The body sends signals. The emotions do not respond. To the brain, this absence is not neutral. Silence is interpreted as information. The brain attempts to resolve the contradiction. If sensation exists but emotional presence does not, then the most logical conclusion becomes this: I do not exist. The delusion does not form randomly. It forms as an explanation for missing data. In this way, Cotard's delusion becomes a solution rather than a symptom. It is the brain's attempt to explain why existence feels absent. The delusion is not loud. It is quiet. It emerges from emotional silence, from the absence of internal confirmation that the self is still alive. And once that explanation takes hold, the belief becomes absolute. The patient is not questioning reality. They believe reality has already ended. Section 7. Associated conditions. Cotard's delusion has been documented across a wide range of psychiatric and neurological disorders. It does not belong to a single diagnosis. It emerges when multiple systems responsible for identity and emotional presence fail simultaneously. It is most commonly observed in cases of severe psychotic depression. In these patients, emotional numbness reaches an extreme level. The individual does not merely feel empty. They feel absent. Schizophrenia is another frequent context. Here, the delusion integrates into broader disruptions of reality testing, self-boundary perception, and belief formation. Cotard's beliefs may coexist with hallucinations, thought disorder, or persecutory delusions. In bipolar disorder, Cotard's delusion is most often seen during severe depressive or mixed episodes. The delusion tends to emerge after prolonged emotional collapse rather than during elevated mood states. Neurological conditions also play a significant role. Parkinson's disease and various forms of dementia can produce the necessary breakdown in emotional processing and self-awareness. As cognitive integration weakens, the internal sense of being alive may erode. Epilepsy, particularly involving the temporal lobes, has been associated with transient or persistent Cotard-like beliefs. Seizure activity can disrupt emotional familiarity and bodily ownership abruptly. Traumatic brain injury is another documented trigger. Damage to frontal or limbic regions can dismantle the systems that maintain a continuous sense of self. In some cases, Cotard's delusion appears suddenly, often following a neurological or psychiatric crisis. In others, it develops slowly, forming after prolonged emotional shutdown, dissociation, or severe depression. Across all cases, the defining feature remains the same. The brain fails to recognize the self as present, alive, and emotionally real. The delusion does not arise from imagination. It arises from a loss of internal confirmation that existence is still occurring. Section 8. Risk factors and danger. Cotard's delusion becomes life-threatening when the belief system begins to dictate behavior rather than remain confined to thought. As the conviction of being dead solidifies, survival loses meaning. Patients may refuse food and water, not out of distress, but because nourishment feels unnecessary to a body they believe no longer exists. Medical care is often rejected as treatment appears irrelevant to someone convinced that bodily processes have already ended. Injury, illness, and physical deterioration are dismissed as inconsequential. Motivation for self-preservation erodes completely. Basic needs such as eating, sleeping, and maintaining hygiene lose purpose. Some patients engage in deliberate self-neglect, using physical decline as confirmation of their belief that death has already occurred. Mortality risk becomes high without intervention. Not because the patient wants to die, not because they are seeking escape, but because, within their perception, death is no longer a future outcome. It is a completed event. This creates a uniquely dangerous clinical picture. The patient may appear calm, withdrawn, or compliant, masking the severity of the risk. The absence of fear or agitation can delay recognition of medical urgency. Without treatment, the delusion reinforces itself. Each ignored bodily signal becomes evidence. Each act of neglect strengthens the belief. The danger is not impulsivity or intent. The danger is indifference to survival itself. Section 9. Clinical Management. Clinical management of Cotard's delusion focuses on restoring emotional self-presence rather than directly challenging the belief. Treatment is aimed at reactivating the systems that generate the internal sense of being alive. Antidepressants are commonly used, particularly in cases involving severe psychotic depression. Antipsychotic medication may be introduced to reduce delusional intensity and stabilize thought processes. Mood stabilizers are sometimes employed when the condition appears within bipolar or affective disorders. In severe or treatment-resistant cases, electroconvulsive therapy has demonstrated the highest rates of recovery. ECT appears to rapidly restore emotional processing and bodily awareness in patients who are otherwise unresponsive to medication. Structured care environments are often necessary during acute phases. These settings ensure safety, consistent nourishment, and medical supervision while reducing cognitive overload. Direct confrontation of the belief is avoided. Arguing with the patient about whether they are alive typically strengthens the delusion rather than weakening it. Instead, clinicians focus on maintaining calm, neutral interactions and minimizing distress. Underlying neurological conditions are addressed simultaneously. When brain function improves, emotional signaling may begin to return. The objective is not to convince the patient that they exist. It is to restore the emotional signals that make existence feel real. When emotional presence returns, the belief often dissolves on its own. Section 10. Psychological Implication. Cotard's delusion reveals something fundamental about human existence. We do not know we are alive because we think it. We know we are alive because we feel it. Existence is not maintained by logic. It is maintained by emotional feedback from the body and brain. When that feedback disappears, even the most basic truth can collapse, including the belief that one exists at all. Now we know that Cotard's delusion is a catastrophic failure of self-existence recognition. It convinces individuals that they are dead, empty, or non-existent. It leads to withdrawal, refusal of care, and extreme risk. It is not metaphor, it is not imagination, it is a neurological and psychiatric breakdown of emotional presence. The patient is not denying life, their brain has stopped confirming it. And without that confirmation, existence itself disappears. You've just heard one more fragment of how unstable, unpredictable, and fragile the human mind really is. If this case or this disorder changed the way you look at people, that means you're finally seeing what most can't see. New files will be opened soon. More cases. More disorders. More cracks in the human psyche. Until then, stay observant. And if you want more cases, you know what to do. Remember, Observation is survival.